I'm really glad that you have chosen to spend some time listening to my video, and I'm also truly excited to come back with a second video in the series. In this video, I will discuss and demonstrate using TensorFlow variables, eager execution, how do the graphs work in TensorFlow 2, and we will also take up the concept of the auto differentiation and how is it implemented using gradient tapes in TensorFlow 2. Before we move on to the topics for this particular video, let us do a quick recap of the video 1. So in the video 1, what we discussed was TensorFlow is a very well adopted Python library in the industry because it is open source and probably the most popular ML and DL library, and it is very easy to use, and it is also a complete end-to-end platform. Version 2.x of TensorFlow introduced iterative programming through eager execution. This helps in fast development, testing, and debugging. In the version 1, we had a concept of symbolic programming, that is running the graphs in the session and by giving inputs through placeholders. And we also discussed that constants help us create tensors from other data types like Python and NumPy. And we also discussed that we use tensors to represent data in the flow of the tensors through the series of operations. And since the data could be of any dimension, the tensors also can be multidimensional, and the tensors are immutable because we do not want the input data to be changed during the computation. So that's why the tensors are immutable. So once they are created, they cannot be updated or changed. So that's exactly what we had done in the session 1. So let's move on to the topic of this particular session, right? So the first thing that we are going to discuss in today's session is variables. Okay, so till now what we had seen is that each node in the computation graph has tensor input and output. Tensors represent data, and they flow through the graph, that is a series or the sequence of operations. And since we do not update data while computation, tensors are immutable, right? Now if you recall, we also discussed the concept of weights in neural networks. The weights are updated while the network is trained, right? And that is exactly variables come very handy, because variables can be updated as compared to the tensors. Tensors are immutable, variables can be updated during the computation. Okay, so hence variables are used to store weights of the model usually. Okay, so variables usually will begin some initial value, and later they are going to be updated as and when required. And variables can be updated through tf.assign call. Okay, so now let's go to some of the examples. So in this particular case, you can see that my tensor variable, the constant is getting created through the tf constant statement here. So it's a 2 by 2 matrix that we are creating to the constant. So my tensor is basically a tensor that is created through the tf.constant call, and then we use that tensor to create a variable. So this is where you see that tf.variable is being used. Just mind that v is capital here, and we are passing this tensor to it, and we get a variable. So what does it mean? Once we have a variable, we will be able to change the values that we have here. Like instead of 1, we can make it 5. Instead of 2, we can make it something else. Okay, now the variables also can be of different types. Okay, so tf.variable, here you see that we are passing a list of the Boolean variables. Okay, in this particular case we are passing the complex numbers. So data types could be anything. Okay, and as I was telling earlier, the way that we update a given variable is actually we create a variable and then we say that variable dot assign. Okay, and then we give a set of new values, and then those new values will become the new values. So what's going to happen here, let's say if we had a variable created a and we do this assign call on it, then what's going to happen, it's going to update the same memory. So if the variable was pointing to certain memory, the values are going to be updated in the same memory location. Okay, so memory, tensor memory is reused in case of assign. Okay, now variables can be created from an existing variable as well. Okay, so in this case, two variables do not share the memory. Okay, now in this particular case, let's say we are creating this variable from a list of the values here, and then we create another variable starting from this variable. So we say that tf dot variable, and we pass this earlier created variable here, right? And now let's say if we do the a dot assign 5 and 6, now the question is, will it change the variable b or not? Okay, and the answer to that is no. The variables will not share the same memory. So the variable b is independent once it is created, and variable a is independent, right? So if let's say if we print these, we will get 2 and 3, and initially when it was created it will be 2 and 3, but now once again when we do this a dot assign 5 6, the variable a is going to get updated, but the variable b will still have the values 2 and 3. Okay, now there is also little different versions of the assign, we can assign and do some operations together. Okay, so say for example, if we do a dot assign add to 3, that means it was already updated to 5 and 6, and then this 2 and 3 are going to get added to it, so it will become 7 and 9 actually. Okay, and if we subtract 7 and 9, so it was already 7 and 9, and if we subtract 7 and 9, it will become 0 and 0 over here. Okay, now another thing about the variable is, if we name the variables and give them some good names actually, or the names which are kind of helpful telling the purpose of that particular variable, then it is easier to track and debug them. Okay, so many times actually we like to capture weights while we train the network to see how the process like how do the weights change over the training, and this is a very useful thing. Like you can give a name and then you can see which variable is changing in what way. Okay, now variables represent weights in the network, right? But there are situations when we do not want variables to be updated, right? For example, there is a concept of a transfer learning, right? So there are pre-trained models. Okay, so if we take those pre-trained models, and if we want to train them for some other purpose, but at the same time we just want to train a few layers, say maybe few external layers of that particular network, then we can say for the layers which are kind of inside, we can say that do not change the weights of those layers. And for that purpose actually we have something called as there is a property of a variable which is called as trainable, and if we make it false, then the weights of that particular variable, they are not going to be changed. Okay, so this is very useful if we do not want the weights to be changed while we are training the network. Okay, so specific layers we do not want to change, so we say that we set those variables as trainable equal to false, and they will not change. Rest of the layers associated with the outer layers, they can change. Now for better performance, what TensorFlow does is actually TensorFlow decides the placement of the variables if it did not tell anything, okay, while the training, right? So say for example, if you are training a neural network and then there are multiple weights, the TensorFlow is going to decide the placement of the variables on the various available CPUs and GPUs on that particular server or a device, okay? But we also have an explicit control over it if we need to have it, okay? So what we do with that is actually we say something like with tf.device and we give the device name, say something like CPU 0, CPU 1, 2, 3, whatever is available on that particular machine, and we can also select the GPUs, right? So that way we can create the variables with within the context of a particular device also. So in this particular case, the variable a and b, they are created in the context of a CPU 0. And now when we are creating this variable k, which is a multiplication of a and b, we are basically doing it in the context of a GPU 0. So what does it mean? It means that the variables can reside in the CPU 0, but we can do the computation and put the results into another device also, okay? Interesting, right? So we can have basically the variables at a common location, and we can do the computation into a different device also, okay? Now another very important concept which came into the TensorFlow 2.x is the eager execution, right? And so far we saw that we need to create a computation graph and then run that graph in a session, right, in the TensorFlow 1. We also saw that we feed the data into the network through a placeholder, but this is a bit inconvenient while we are developing and testing our models, right? So this was simplified by eager execution introduced in TensorFlow version 2.x. In eager execution, every line or operation is evaluated immediately. But then earlier we could bundle operations in a graph, right? So in the TensorFlow 1, we could create a graph and then execute it as one unit in a session, right? Now we have this problem that, okay, we can execute statement by statement, but the question is, how do we then once again execute multiple operations as one unit in TensorFlow 2, right? So with eager execution, we can do this by the concept of a gradient tape. So whenever we need to do multiple computations together, before we calculate gradients and update weights, we use gradient tape to trace operations for computing gradients later. Okay, so gradient tape gives us a full control over our computation in the eager mode. Okay, so just to illustrate this concept of the eager execution, what we are doing here in this particular snippet of a code is we are this input, okay, single it's a vector that we are creating with a single value, and then we are doing a matrix multiplication of x into x, okay, and we are printing this, right? Now if it was to be done in the TensorFlow 1, we'll have to basically create a session and execute this whole graph into that particular session. But this is not the case with TensorFlow 2. So if we execute say x equal to 2, and if we do the matrix multiplication and if we print, we'll straight away get the result actually. So each statement is executed as soon as it is it is basically executed one by one by the interpreter. Okay, and we can check if the TensorFlow is executing in the eager mode or not just by this particular call tf.executing eagerly or not. And it can be the eager execution can also be disabled, right? And now coming back to the concept of collating or kind of have a collection of operations as one unit, what we can do is actually so in this snippet of code we are initializing the weight here, tf dot variable, and then we say with tf dot gradient tape as tape. Okay, so we initiate the context of a gradient tape and we begin this recording to a tape, and then we write a sequence of operations here, right? So whatever happens in this context, so in this particular case we are just calculating this loss as w into w. Okay, so once that is recorded, we can calculate a gradient of this particular loss by calling tape dot gradient, and we can pass the loss and the weight. So we want to calculate the gradient of the loss with respect to the weight. So that's why we are doing tape dot gradient, and into bracket we are giving loss and comma weight. Okay, so in short, gradient tape can capture and record all the operations as one unit, and then we can essentially call tape dot gradient to get the actual gradients on it. Okay, now moving on, see, we discussed and talked about the graphs earlier also, right, when we were discussing about the TensorFlow 1, right? Now graphs are portable and can be exported and run without Python interpreter in the smaller devices, right? Now graphs can be run in the performant manner as well. So there are a lot of optimizations which are done on the graphs by the TensorFlow, like, you know, something like running the competitions in parallel, etc., right? But on the other hand, we also need the eager execution because it is helpful during the development, right? So the question now is, how can we have both, right? We want the power of the graphs and we want to execute the operations as one unit, but at the same time when we are developing it, we want it to be executed statement by statement, right? So can we have the best of both, right? And the answer to that is yes, we can do that. So how do we do that, right? So there are two ways it can be done. Is any normal Python function can be decorated with @tf. Okay, so if we decorate a function with @tf, so here we are decorating this outer function. This is a Python function, right, def. So we are decorating that function with the tf dot function, right? And within this Python function, if you see that there is also an inner function which is being called. So what is going to happen is actually this wrapping of the outer function is also going to be extended to the inner function also, right? And if we call this outer function with giving some data, then this whole thing is going to get executed as a graph. Okay, so this is one way. There is another way also. I will talk about directly calling that function, and I will show it to you when we actually get into the notebook. Okay, so there are two ways, either to call a function directly using tf dot function or decorate it using the tf dot function. Okay, now the code in the function can be executed both eagerly and as a graph. Okay, by default function executes its code as a graph. Okay, So it's a configuration that we have to change. tf.config.run functions eagerly. If we set it to true, then it is going to be run eagerly. So we have, let's say during the development, we can keep this as eager. Okay, so every statement will be executed line by line, and once we are done with our development, we can just set it to false, and then it will be executed as a graph. So this is very, very useful from the development perspective and from the performance perspective also. Okay, now there is also another concept that we need to be clear about, right? So earlier we had seen that the back propagation calculates gradient in the reverse order of the operations in the forward pass, right? But then for that, TensorFlow needs to remember the order of the operations in the forward pass, right? Now gradient tape does exactly the same thing. It records the operation that were executed in the forward pass in its context, and it remembers the order of those operations, right? And once those operations are recorded, gradients with respect to weights can be calculated by reverse, by going reverse on those operations. Okay, so gradient tape essentially records everything and it remembers the order, and then when it comes to actually comes to updating, calculating the gradients and updating the weights, it goes in the reverse direction and calculates the gradients and updates the weights. Okay, so let's quickly see what we are doing here. So we have this variable w which is initialized to some random values in a shape of 3 by 2, and then we have a bias here which is initialized to a shape of 2 with a float type. So we have a weight and we have bias, and this is our input data. Okay, so 1 to 3. So it has got a shape of 3 comma, and that is why the weights are initialized to 3 by 2, because the input shape and the first axis of the weight variable, they have to match, right? And then what we are doing with TF gradient tape persistent equal to true. So we will discuss this part. So for now, let's leave this persistent equal to true. So we say that this is going to be recorded as a tape, and then we do certain calculations. So we are calculating the output by multiplying the input with weight and adding a bias to it, and then we do a loss calculation by doing a reduction operation on the y square. Okay, so this is not the actual loss. I mean, in the actual loss we'll be subtracting the label from this, but for now it's okay. We are not much bothered about how we calculate the loss here. We are more worried about how to calculate a gradient using tape.gradient, right? So once the loss is calculated here, we use tape.gradient and pass loss and a list of the variables with respect to which we want to calculate the gradient. So here we can see that there are two gradients which are being calculated. One is the gradient for the weight and one is the gradient for the bias, right? So it's a very powerful thing, right? You can bunch the multiple operations under the context of the TF dot gradient tape. They are recorded, and then we just have to calculate a gradient by giving the list of the variables with respect to which we want to calculate the gradient. Now it is convenient to use the TF module or its subclasses to take care of collecting all the TF variables, right? Because in a layer or in a model we could have bunch of variables or the weights, right? So what usually happens is the TF module is extended. Any class which extends the TF module is going to collect all the TF variables, right? And those TF variables, collected TF variables, actually they are available as layer dot trainable variables, okay, or for that matter TF dot module dot trainable variables, right? So if we want to differentiate and calculate the gradients of all the trainable variables, we can just simply say that tf dot module dot trainable variables, or in this particular case we are using a layer which is also a subclass of the module, right? So we have created a layer here from tf.keras.layer.dense, and then we are just using the trainable variables of that particular layer. And once again we are setting up the context of the gradient tape, and we are doing certain calculations here, right? So in this particular case we are taking an input x here and we are passing that to a layer calculates this output, and then using that output we are calculating a loss value, and then we are calculating a gradient using the trainable variables of that particular layers, okay? So the key the takeaway from this is we can use the subclass of the module to take care of collection of all the variables, so that we can access those variables very easily by just doing tf dot module dot trainable variables or any subclass of tf dot module. So in summary, what we have done so far is variables are usually used to hold weights of the model, and variables need to be initialized and can be updated. Variables can be set to be a non-trainable if desired, and variables can be allocated to specific devices, and eager execution is used to get results after every operation. It's good for development purposes. We can record series of operations in the context of tf.gradient tape and later use tf.gradient to calculate gradients. And then the graphs are used to export device independent models. We can decorate any function to make it a graph, and graph can be executed in the eager or non-eager mode. That is what we have covered so far, right? So what we'll do is we will now leave the presentation and we'll see some of the notebooks, okay, in which all these concepts we will be able to see from with hands-on, okay? So this is our first notebook here in which we are going to be discussing and demonstrating how do the variables work. So as usual we are going to do an import on the TF. It's taking a little longer. Okay, it's fine. So this has been done. Now what we are doing, we are creating a variable from a single value, scalar, right? And we are going to print it. So let's do that. So variables and tensors, they are pretty much the same, except that variables can be updated and they have this additional method of assign. Otherwise, from the attribute perspective and most of the other perspective of reshaping, indexing, variables and tensors are pretty much the same, okay? So here we can see that it is named as variable 0. So if you do not give a name to a variable, it is going to be automatically named by the TensorFlow, right? So later we will see giving names also to a variable, and the shape, there is no shape here because it's a scalar, okay? And then there is a data type and the value that we have given, right? Now it's not necessary that it has to be scalar only. So here we are creating the two-dimensional 2 by 2 matrix. So here we have a list of the lists, right? Python a list of the lists, and then we are basically creating a variable out of that list of the list, right? So what do we get here? We get the variable which is of the shape 2 by 2 data type, and this is how it looks like, right? So it's of the shape 2 by 2, that means 2 rows 2 columns. Okay, now in this case what we are doing is actually we are using the TF constant to create a tensor first, and then we are creating a variable out of the tensor here. So we create tensor here out of this TF constant and then pass it. So we are creating a variable out of this tensor, right? So once again, as expected, the shape is 2 by 2, and this is how it is going to look like. And then we can create a variable out of the string also, and let's see what kind of shape it has. So it is automatically named as variable 0, no shape, because it's a single value. Okay, and it's encoded as byte string. Okay, so this B is basically byte string. Now we have these multiple strings, and let's see what does it show up here. So we have these 4 values here, 4 strings. So that's why we are getting this vector of the shape 4 comma, and this is how it is going to look like, and all the strings are encoded as byte strings. Okay, so now how do we get a value once the variable is created? Okay, so there are two ways actually. It is a dot value. So let's say we have created this variable, so we can say a dot value, or we can say a dot numpy also. So this is going to return the values as numpy object. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So this is what we are getting here. Print the values a dot value. So these are the values TF tensor, and the value stored in the variable. So next statement, value stored in the variable a dot numpy. So this is a numpy array that is being printed, and this is printed as a tensor with a shape of 2 by 2. Okay. So we earlier we were also saying that we can name the variable, right? So how can we print the name of the variable? So we have initialized this particular variable, and we'll try to see how we can get the name of that particular variable. So in this particular case, since we did not initialize the name of the variable, it is automatically assigned, and it is shown as variable 0. So similarly, like tensors, we can also print the data type, and we can print the shape, dimension, and the size of a variable. So this is pretty much similar to the tensor, because anyway the variables are actually backed by the tensors, right? Only thing is the variable can be updated. Now as tensors, we can also do operations on the variables also, right? And that's pretty obvious, because ultimately the variables are meant to be updated, and we are going to conduct operations on the variables, right? So the certain operations like addition and subtraction, they are overloaded with this plus and minus signs, or star, and the division sign, modulo, and matrix multiplication. So matrix multiplication is add sign, modulo is percent sign. So that's what we are seeing here. We will initialize a variable and do certain operations on it. So we saw that it is overloaded, right? So we are using this plus operator here, minus operator here. So every element is getting added. So 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 2 is 4, and 3 here and 4 here, right? So same thing here, there's a subtraction happening here, right? A minus 2, it starts with A, right? So A minus 2 is minus 1 here, and 2 minus 2 is 0. So minus 1 here and 0 here, okay? Now we can do the multiplication and the division also similarly. So we can use a star and the slash forward slash sign, and the multiplication and division will be carried out. And then we can do the matrix multiplication with the at sign. So we can say A at A, and it will multiply, do the matrix multiplication here, and this is the modulo, right? So modulo 2. So modulo 2 is if I am dividing 1 by 2, the remainder is 1, because I cannot divide 1 by 2. Okay, so the remainder is 1, so that's why it will show up as 1 and 1. And for 2, it will be 2 divided by 2, so which is, there's no remainder, so it is 0 and 0 in this particular case. There you go. And this is how we assign a new value. So we create a variable and then change the value, and we see if the value is being changed or not. So initially the value was 1, 2, 1 and 2, and then it was updated to 200, 110. So 200 and 110. Okay. And once again, in tensors, we also have the concept of the indexing in the variables. Okay. So once the variable is created, we can index the values. So something like a0 dot numpy. So first element at the first level. So this element, you know, from here to here, 1 and 2, first row. Then the second element of the first level, so a1 dot numpy. So it will be 5 and 7. And then if you want to go deeper, we can use a comma. So if you say 1 comma 0, so 0 and 1 comma 0, so which is 5, and then 1 comma 1 is 7. Okay, so the index works exactly same as tensor, which we had discussed in the video, our first video as well. The concept of the broadcasting also remains the same. That means if you're trying to do an operation having two tensors or two variables in this particular case, and if the dimensions are different, then the variable with a smaller dimension, it is going to be kind of stretched to the dimensions of the bigger variable, and then it will do the multiplication, right? So in this particular case, 1 is getting multiplied by 5, 5 and 2 are getting multiplied, 5 and 3 are getting multiplied, 5 and 4 are getting multiplied. So this is the result that we get out of it, right? And the reshape also is the same thing. So here initially we are having a 2 by 2 matrix, and then it is being reshaped into 4 by 1. So that means 4 by 1 is 4 rows, 1 column, right? So that's why you see 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 as 1 column, but 4 rows over here, 4 comma 1. And the next thing is, how can we check on which device a particular variable is running? So we can say a dot device. So we initialize a variable here, and then we can say a dot device here, and then we'll get a device on which a particular variable is running. Now in this particular case, we have a runtime set as GPU, right? So the variable is assigned to a GPU, because TensorFlow will allocate a variable to a particular device which is most performant for that particular data type. Okay, and here what is being done is actually we are assigning variables to specific devices. So we have a CPU here and a GPU here. So these two devices, these two variables, they are going to be put onto a CPU. Okay, and then we are going to calculate, we are going to do a multiplication, and which we are going to put it onto the GPU, and let's see what happens here. So as you can see, variable A and B, they are put onto the CPU as we wanted them to, and the calculation is put onto the GPU, right? And this is the final thing that we are going to talk about, the variables. So here we are setting this particular variable as trainable as false. So we had created this A here, and we are setting this property of a variable trainable equal to false. So after that it will not change, okay, during the process of training. Okay, so that was our first notebook, and we discussed a few things about the variables. The next notebook is about the eager execution. Okay, so eager execution is basically running line by line, correct? And we also saw that how we can check if it is if this particular notebook is running eagerly or not, right? So it is tf dot executing eagerly or not, that's the call. So let's try to execute this and see what we are getting. So by default, okay, so we had not imported the tf, so let's first import and then execute this. So it is true, so it is executing in the eager mode, right? Now we can actually disable the eager execution. So first of all, in the eager execution, let's see how does it whether we get this result or not, right? So what we are doing here is we are creating a tensor A, tensor B. We are adding up these two tensors, and we are getting a tensor C, right? And then we are printing it. Now since we are into the eager execution mode, each statement should execute and then we should get a value of the C, right? That's the expectation. So let's see how does it work, right? So we got an addition, we got a value like 1 plus 2 is equal to 3, and we got shape as none because it's a scalar and a data type. Okay, now let's do something. Let's call this disable eager execution. Okay, and execute these operations. So we disable the eager execution and then we did this, right? So did we get anything here now? Did we get the value of C? No, right? Because the eager execution is disabled. So unless now we explicitly run this operation is not, unless we call this C explicitly, is not going to work, right? Now the problem with this disable eager execution is once the execution is disabled, we cannot enable it. Okay, so what will happen? Let's say we do this enable eager execution, we get a error here, must be called at program startup, right? So what we are going to do now, right? So nothing, we just have to do runtime, and we have to restart the runtime, right? So you will see that it is restarting. This collaboratory notebook is restarting. It is once again started. So we have to do the import again. okay, and we can see if it is executing eagerly or not. So it is executing eagerly. Now in this particular case we are not going to disable the eager execution, so that's why I'm commenting it out. And let me also save this notebook, and once that is done I can execute this. So as you can see, since it was eager execution, we got the value of C over here. Okay, so there is no point in calling the enable eager execution. Probably we can just try it out, and since it was already on, it went through. Now what's going to happen here, our expectation is that it should be executed, right? Because it's eager, so each statement should be executed and we should get the value. And since we have 2 into 2, we should get 4 here, and that's exactly what we got, right? Now the concept of the gradient tape, right? So we said that earlier we had discussed that if you want to run a number of operations as one unit, we can use a gradient tape, right? And that's what we will try to do now. Okay, so in this particular case, what's happening, we are creating a variable w, and then we are just doing a simple operation w multiplied by w, and which we call as a loss. This is not actually a loss, but just for the sake of doing any calculation, we are doing that. And once it is recorded, that operation is recorded, then we can calculate a gradient, tape dot gradient. We give it a loss, and with respect to which variable we want to calculate a gradient. So let's see what happens. So print grad, so this is our gradient, right? And shape is 1 by 1. Okay, why 1 by 1? Because our original variable itself is 1 by 1, right? This is a 1 by 1 shape. And why is the gradient 4? Because as you can see, the loss is w into w, so that is w square. And if we are trying to differentiate that with respect to w, then it's going to be 2x, right? The differential is differential of x square is 2x, so that's why 2 into 2, 4, right? Now let's try to see how we can do a complete training loop with the eager execution, right? So for that, what we are going to do is actually we are going to load the MNIST data set, and then we are going to normalize the images in it, and do some processing with the labels, and then we are going to shuffle the data set, and we are going to create the batches of the data, like so there will be batches of 32 images each. Okay, so let's do this. Right, so now we have the data set ready, and if you notice, actually we are using the Keras data set, so it's kind of easy to load the data sets using the Keras data sets. Okay, and what we are going to do is, now we are going to create a model. Right, now if you see, this model has got multiple layers, right? So we are going to use this Keras dot sequential model, and we are going to have multiple layers in it. Right, so we have 4 different layers here. So let's create this model, sequential model. Okay, so that is done, and we can just do a summary of this model just to see what it looks like. So as you can see, the parameters are basically these are the trainable parameters. Okay, so as you can see, each layer has got different trainable parameters, and trainable parameters include the weights and the biases together for that particular layer. Okay, so weights and biases for this layers is equal to 160, and for the other layer it is 2320, etc. Okay, now these are the parameters which are going to get adjusted when we do the training. Okay, so now usually the Keras model has its own dot fit method, but what we are going to do is actually we are not going to use the model dot fit method. We are going to develop the method, the training loop ourselves using the gradient dot tape. Okay, so even before we actually do the training loop, since we are talking about the eager execution, the point here is even before training the model, we can call the model, we can give an image and we can see what is the output which is produced by the model. Okay, so over here we are just taking one batch from the data set, and then we are just giving one image out of it to the model, and we are trying to get the logits out of it, right? So let's see how does it work. So we got the logits, right? Okay, now what we are going to do is actually we are going to create an optimizer, and then we are also going to create a loss function and a loss history, so that we can keep on recording the loss values throughout the training step. Okay, and before I come to this train step, let me just see the overall training loop here. So we are going to do training in number of epochs, and then for each of the epoch we are going to take a batch of images from a data set, and we are going to feed that to the train step method, images and the labels. Okay, and then we are going to print like how many epochs are finished. Okay, now what happens in the train step method? So what is happening here is we are basically using the tf dot gradient tape as tape. So we are recording the operations. So what are the operations? So we are getting the logits, right? So we are feeding the images into the model, we are getting the logits, right? And we are saying that training is equal to true, so it is in the train mode, the model is in the train mode. And we are also doing, and we are just doing a little bit of debugging here, just to show that the eager execution is working. And then we are saying that we are calculating the loss value. Okay, so we say loss object, so we are calling this particular function actually loss object, and we are giving it labels, the true labels and the predicted logits, okay, which we are getting here, and we are getting the loss value, and we are appending that to the loss history. And then we are calculating the gradients, right? Now the interesting thing here is when we are calling this tape.gradient method, we are giving this loss value. So we want to calculate the differential of the loss value, but with respect to what, right? So with respect to MNIST model dot trainable variables, right? So this is the whole thing, that we are basically able to get all the trainable variables of the MNIST model, and that includes everything that we saw here. All these weights, okay, that are mentioned here, they are going to be included into this trainable variables, and we are able to calculate the gradients of all the gradient of the loss value with respect to all these trainable variables. So we get the gradients here. And the next interesting thing is we are using the optimizer dot apply gradient. So we are using the method apply gradients of an optimizer to update all the trainable variables of the model. So you can see how easy it is to update all the trainable models of trainable variables of a model just by using a single method here. So we calculate the gradients using the tape.gradient, and then we say that optimizer dot apply gradients, and apply to what? Apply to this trainable variables of the model. Okay, so let's do the let's execute this and see how does this work. So we are defining this, and then we are also defining this training loop here, and then we are calling this train loop for 3 epochs here. Right, so this will take a couple of seconds. So once the epoch is finished, we'll get a print statement. It's taking a bit longer than what I had thought, so I am going to pause the video and I'll come back when. Okay, so it already came. So epoch 0 is finished. Let me pause the video. So yes, all the 3 epochs are finished now, and then we can basically plot the loss history actually. So we will be able to see the loss versus batches, like how did the loss progressed as the batches actually also progressed. Okay, so as you can see, you know, as we went through the batches, actually the loss kind of came down. Okay, so that's pretty much about the tape gradient and applying the gradients. Right now, we were earlier talking about how can we have the best of both, like having the eager execution and the benefits of the graph also. So the purpose of this notebook is to demonstrate the points around the graphs and the eager execution. So let's get started. Let's import a few libraries. So that is done. Now here you see that there's a function, a Python function, which is defined, which has got x, y, and b, like 3 inputs are there, and we are just multiplying matrix multiplication of x and y, and then we are adding a bias to it and returning x. Now this is a Python function, right? And what we do is, if you want to create a graph out of this particular function, what we can do is we can wrap it using the tf dot function and the name of this particular function over here, and that is going to return us a function object. Okay, and then we can use that function object and pass the input data and get the results out of it. So what happens, because we wrapped it, then it is going to be executed as a graph. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so what is the shape of x1 here? It's 1 by 2, and shape of y1, it is 2 by 1. So when we are doing the matrix multiplication, x and y matrix multiplication, what are we going to get? 1 by 1. Okay, and if you really see, it is 2 into 1 plus 3 into 2 into 3, that is 6, 6 plus 2, 8, and plus this bias 8, 12. So 8 plus 4, 12, and that's what we are getting here. Okay, now the second method of wrapping this function and converting it into a graph is actually by using a decorator at tf dot function. So what we are doing here is we are doing a similar thing here, but there are 2 points we are trying to illustrate. So first point is we decorate a function, right? So we create this function, outer function, we pass an input to it, and within this function we define this y and b. So like in earlier case we had created this separately and passed all these 3 things, right, to a function. In this case what we are doing is we are creating an outer function and passing an input to it, but we are defining this y and b inside this outer function, and then we are calling a inner function which takes in this input and then y and b, x, y, b. Okay, and then we call this inner function which does the matrix multiplication and addition of the intermediate result here plus bias here and return that value. Okay, so the result that we are going to get is the same. Actually, it's once again going to create a graph and it is going to give us the same result. But the point to note here is, when we are decorating this function, even if we have the inner function, this definition once we decorated this particular function, it is extended to the inner function also. Okay, that's what we got to keep in mind. So two methods: call the function directly. So first you create a function object, tf.function, pass the name of the Python function here, and you get a function object, and then you use that function object and give it an input and you get an output. So this function is executed as a graph. Otherwise you basically decorate a function using @tf.function, and then we can call that function with the inputs and it will be executed as a graph. Okay, now the thing is, the code in the function can be executed both eagerly and as a graph. Okay, by default function executes its code as a graph. So what we are going to do here is we are going to do a little bit of a test here. Okay, so what we do is we define one function here, get mean squared error. That's the function. So it has got the true labels and the predicted labels as inputs, and we have this print statement here. Okay, and we'll see why this print statement is required here. So how is the loss calculated? The loss is actually the difference between the true label and a predicted label and squaring it, right? So that's why this power function is there, so raised to 2, right? And then we basically reduce reduce it to a mean and return it, right? So let's do, and this function is decorated, so it is going to get executed as a graph. Okay, now what we are doing, we are just generating some data, y true and y predicted, and we are just printing it. So we generated like 5 values of the true and the predicted. Okay, and now what we are going to do is we are going to be running this function, calling this function get MSE 3 number of times, right? So what do we expect? We expect that we should have this print statement 3 number of times, right? So let's see what happens. We got the print statement only once, right? So what is the reason for it? Since this function is decorated, it is executed as a graph. So first time when we call this, the graph is traced. Okay, as it is called, the graph is traced, and once the graph is traced and it is created, then next time onward it is not retraced again and again. So that's why you don't get the print statement. So you get the print statement only one, and next 2 times you do not get the print statements here, right? That is the thing to understand here. Okay, now how can we change this? We said that we can either execute it eagerly or as a graph. So by default it is executing as a graph, right? That is what we saw. Now we can do that by setting this configuration tf.config.run function eagerly true. Okay, so we are saying that enable the eager execution for the graph. So we did that, and now if we call this function 3 times, let's see what happens. It's called 3 times here. Okay, so now if I go back here and call this again, I am getting it 3 times. Okay, because it is executed eagerly, right? Now if I turn this off again, eager execution, and go here, I'll not get anything because my graph is already ready. So that's why no print statement. Okay, now we'll also try to see how does the performance improve when we essentially use the graph execution, that is we turn off the eager execution. Okay, so we have just created one small function here to test out, and we are generating some data, input data x as 10 by 10 matrix here, and then we are going to call this function with x and y. Now this result is, this is basically a unit matrix, right? So even if we multiply anything with this result, nothing is going to happen. Okay, you are going to get basically the same result. So matrix multiplication of x into result. So this is a unity matrix. Okay, and we return the result here. Okay, so let's do this. So now what we have done, we had actually turned off the eager execution. So let's turn on the eager execution because we want to see how does it work with the eager execution. So I'm going to set it to true again here. So we have set the configuration to run the functions in the eager mode, and we can try out running this function in the eager mode. So we are basically doing it 1000 number of times. Okay, so let's first define this function. Okay, so that has been done, and then let's time this. Okay, so it was 1.187, and now let's do it as a graph actually. So we are wrapping it into the TF function, and then we are executing it in the graph mode. Okay, and 1000 times. So it is in the 1.131. So a little bit of speed up. Let's also try to execute it again. It has gone up. Let me try it again a little bit. So 1.181. So see, I think initially it's basically trying to once the graph is created, then the time of the execution is actually reducing as compared to the eager execution. And it also depends on the hardware configuration. We have set it to the GPU. We have the runtime set to the GPU. So hardware acceleration is anyway on. Okay, and this is a way that the generated graph can be seen, right? So we have this function. Once we wrap it as a graph, we can see the generated graph also. So we can use that function object power as a graph. This is what we had created, and say get concrete function, and it will give the definition into a kind of a JSON format. Okay, over here. Okay, so that's pretty much for this particular notebook. Now the next topic that we are going to be talking about is about the automatic differentiation, right? So automatic differentiation we had seen is implemented using the gradient tape, right? So let's try a few examples around that. So as usual, we are going to import the libraries, and the next thing that we are going to do is actually we are going to create a scalar variable here, and then we are going to be capturing a calculation y is equal to x square. Okay, a very simple operation in the context of the gradient tape. So tape is recording this particular operation. So that has been done, and once that is done, what we are trying to do is we are trying to calculate a gradient of y with respect to x. Okay, so y was x square, right? So x square with respect to x is basically 2x, and that's what we should get. Correct? So that's how it is. So this is for the scalar, but it need not be restricted to the scalar, and should not be, because usually we are going to use the collection of the gradients and the calculation of the gradients on the weight matrix and the bias matrix, right? So this is what it is going to look like. So in this particular case, what we are doing is we are creating a weight variable of the shape 3/2 over here, and then we are creating a bias variable of the shape of 2. Okay, and then we have this we have got this input data which is of 1/3, right? And then with the TF gradient, y persistent is equal to true, because we have these two operations here. Okay, so that is why. Otherwise it will discard actually the resources. So that's why we are saying persistent equal to true, because we want to execute multiple operations here, right? So let's do this. And then what we are doing, actually we are calculating the gradient, tape dot gradient loss with respect to w and b, right? And then we are printing the gradient matrix and the gradient of the weights matrix and gradients of the bias matrix. As you can note, actually the gradient matrix is same shape as your original variable w, because see, essentially these are the updates to the weights, right? So it has to be, the shape has to be same as your original variable, and the same thing for the bias also. It has got this 2 elements here, right? 2 comma, that is the shape of the bias gradient matrix. Okay, now earlier we also saw that essentially the layers are being used for collecting all the trainable variables, right? And that's the discussion that we had earlier. So in this particular case, we are going to use a layer, we are going to use a gradient tape, and then we are going to use this layer to calculate the outputs from the model, and then we are going to calculate the loss and then the gradients. But in the gradients, rather than giving the list of these variables like this, what we are doing here is we are saying layer dot trainable variables. Okay, because the layer is automatically going to collect all the trainable variables into it. Okay, and once that is done, we can just we can also see what is there in the layer trainable variables, right? So that's what it is. Dense. So these are the names actually. So what we are printing is actually variable name and the shape of the gradient that we have. So shape of the gradient and the variable itself is 3/2. Shape of the bias is 2 comma. Right. Now another small point is the default behavior when we are using the gradient tape is actually to record all operations after accessing a trainable TF dot variable. Okay, but we can disable that and we can watch only specific variables also. So in this particular case, we have these two variables, x0 and x1, and then we are saying with the gradient tape, and we are saying watch access variable equal to false. So we are disabling the watching of the variables totally, and then we say tape dot watch. So we watch only x1. So only the operations on the x1, they are going to get recorded. Okay, so let's see what happens here. So y0 is calculated using x0, y1 is calculated using x1, and then y is equal to y0 plus y1, and ys is equal to reduction of this y. Okay, so what's going to happen here? Now we are calculating the gradients of this ys, the final value with respect to x0 and x1. So what we are getting, actually we get dy, okay, dy by dx0 as none, because we are not watching x0, right? And we are able to get dy by dx1 because we are watching x1 here. Okay, now there's some explanation about the persistent here. So when we want actually the multiple operations to be done one after the other, we have to set this persistent equal to true, otherwise the resources are going to get discarded. So here what we are doing is y, so we have an input x, and then we are calculating y as x into x square, and then z is equal to y into y, that is y square, right? So this is the operations are happening on top of each other, and we do not want y to be discarded before the z is calculated, so that's why we are setting the persistent as true here. Okay, so let's do this. Now as you can see, we basically had we are trying to print z, the gradient of z with respect to x. So as you can see, you know, z is equal to x raised to 4, correct? And the differential is 4 into x cube, right? So that is why 1 into 4 into 1 cube, that is 4. And if you substitute this 3 into this formula, 4 into 3 raised to 3, so 27 into 4, 108, and thus similarly these two values also. Okay, so that's how the calculation, the capturing of the gradients using the gradient tape works, and then we calculate the gradients, right, by calling the tape.gradient method. And we can calculate the gradients with respect to multiple variables also, and we can also disable the watching of certain variables if we do not want to, and we can also use this persistent to do the operations like gradient calculations on top of each other also. Okay, now let's turn to something else. Let's see how we update the weights using the calculated gradients. Okay, so let's once again import the library. Now in this case, what we are doing is actually we are extending this class directly from the keras dot model, right? Now in this case, what we are doing is actually we are using this method, the init method, to store our weights and biases. So we are initializing the weights and biases as 5 and 10 in this particular case, and then we have this call method, that is where we do the actual calculation. So input into weight plus bias, that's the operation, and we'll see where this method is getting used, right? Now what we are trying to do in this exercise is actually we are going to create a toy data set, and the formula for that is 3 into 3x plus 2. That's the kind of the line linear data set that we are trying to generate here, and we are adding a little bit of noise because we want to see how does the fitting of the data using the model work. Okay, so the training outputs is equal to training input into 3 plus 2 plus a little bit of noise here. So that's about the data set, and we have about 2000 samples generated. Okay, now we are defining this loss and gradient method. I'll come to that slightly later. And what we are doing is actually we are also doing we are basically creating a linear class. We are creating an optimizer with certain variables here like learning rate and all, and then we are setting up a loop, actually training loop. In this training loop, what we do actually, we calculate a, we call this grad function. Okay, Now what do we pass to this grad function? We pass a model, training input, training output. Okay, and then we apply the gradients to the model weights using this, okay, in this particular loop. So what happens when we call this grad method? Once again, the loss value is calculated for that particular batch of inputs, and then we apply the gradient to the loss value, and what we say, model.w and model.bias. So we are basically referring to these variables that are declared in the init method, right? So we are able to access that model.w and model.b very easily, and we can apply the gradients, right? And in the gradient, what we are doing, we are calling this loss function here, and we are passing the model input and output. So what's happening here, we basically get the predicted output using model, and we are passing the inputs here. The model is going to give us the predicted output, and that we subtract from the target. So that's our error, and then we reduce that error using the tf dot square, and we return that, right? So that's how this whole loop is working. So let's quickly execute this. I hope I had executed this, so let me re-execute. I'm not sure. Okay, and then I'm going to apply this. So that's how the training actually progressed. Okay, so as you can see, as we went through the different batches, actually the loss was kind of coming down here. Okay, and at each step actually we are feeding like 20 samples over here. Okay, so we are basically, you know, if the 20 steps are complete, we are printing the loss value here. Okay, and finally, once we are done through this, what we are trying to do is we are trying to print W and B, weight and bias actually. And now it is not very surprising to see that W actually has come closer to 3, right? Because the linear data that we created had a slope of 3 and the bias was 2, and that's what the model training process, it adjusted our weights and bias so that it becomes closer to the actual labels. Because if you see, we had started with the value of 5 for the weight and value of 10 for the bias, right? And it got adjusted to something like 3 and 2. So that's how our training is working, right? So I think with this we are coming to a conclusion for the session 2 and a video 2. And once again, just to re-emphasize what we actually saw into this particular session, I'm going to recap or do a recap on the session 2 summary. So we started with variables. We saw that they're usually used to hold the weights of the model, and they need to be initialized, and they can be updated. So that's the difference between the tensor and the variables. And we can change their value by doing assign function, assign call, tf.assign, right? tf.variable.assign. Okay, and then variables can be set to be non-trainable. So if it's a case of a transfer learning, we can set certain layers as non-trainable, okay, or certain variables to be non-trainable, right? And then variables can be allocated to the specific devices. So we have the choice of executing certain variables on certain devices. If we don't do that, then the TensorFlow is going to take care of it. Okay, then we turned into the eager execution, and we saw that eager execution is useful for the development purpose. But at the same time, it is not good from the performance point of view. So if we really wanted to have the best of the eager execution and the graphs, then we have to decorate the functions as and when required, so they will be executed as graph, and we can switch between eager and the graph execution by just doing a configuration change, right? And we also saw the importance of tf dot gradient tape to record a set of operations and then later calculate the gradients on it, right, by giving tape dot gradient, right? And we also saw that we can apply the gradients to the model weights using optimizer apply dot gradient method as well, right? So that was pretty much everything that we wanted to cover in the video 2. So with this I essentially end this particular session, and I will be posting the next video pretty soon. Thank you so much once again for listening, and I would request you to put your comments if you have any, and I'll definitely look through those comments. Thank you so much.